You don't know flag. You don't know flag.
Welcome to You Don't Know Flag, a podcast full of stories about retro gaming, retro computing, video games, arcade games, and technology from a guy who was there and still is. My name is Robb Sherwin, but for the next 30 minutes, you can call me Flag.
Episode 115, Text Adventures with Robb Sherwin.
Hello, and welcome to episode 115 of You Don't Know Flag. This episode is all about text adventures, those old text-based games that required gamers to type in commands and use their imagination to convert the words on the screen into imaginary worlds. And they're not just old. In recent years, text adventures have become rebranded, I guess you could say, as interactive fiction, which many people, including myself and today's guest, continue to write. Episode 115 is definitely a first for You Don't Know Flag. Not only is it the second episode I've released this year, but it will also be the second one I've released this month. And anyway, I'm working really hard at ramping back up to at least doing a monthly release, so enjoy it while my enthusiasm lasts. One suggestion I've received a few times in the past is to have more guests on the show. And since I've been planning a show regarding text adventures for a while, the first name that came to mind was Robb Sherwin. Over the past 10 years, Robb has written and released more than half a dozen works of interactive fiction, including last year's Crypto Zookeeper, which in 2012 won 5 Zizzy Awards for Best Game, Best Writing, Best Setting, Best Non-Player Character, and Best Individual Non-Player Character. Both Robb and I spent a good portion of our youth playing text adventures, so having him on the show was a no-brainer. Now, this particular episode of You Don't Know Flag has actually been in the works for about 2 years. Back when I was first brainstorming topics for episodes of You Don't Know Flag, text adventures were right at the top of the list. And actually in 2010 I wrote a rough draft of this episode and put it in the queue. Then in the summer of 2011, Robb and I began talking and decided to try to record a two-man show. Now around that same time, again this is the summer of 2011, Robb and I got together over Skype and spent about an hour talking about text adventures. So to give you an idea of how old this podcast is, at times throughout the recording, you'll hear Robb Sherwin refer to his latest text adventure, Crypto Zookeeper, in the future tense. But Crypto Zookeeper was actually released about a year ago in May of 2011. So, I kind of dropped the ball on this one. And to make matters even worse, last year I set up a dedicated podcasting machine. Now, some of you know, in the fall, my family and I moved into a new house. And so recently, when I dug out that computer, it wouldn't even boot. So to recover the Skype conversation that Robb and I had recorded, I had to pull the hard drive out, connect it to my new machine, transfer the files over, and then put it back into the podcast format. So I'm not really 100% satisfied with the recording quality. That was the first time that I had actually ever used Skype and tried to record anything on it. So it is what it is, and I hope you're able to overlook the quality of the recording and focus on the content. And hopefully I'll be able to get better quality Skype recordings in the future, and that'll let me have more guests on the show. So anyway, without further ado, I will bring Robb Sherwin onto the line, and we will begin this episode of You Don't Know Flag. So today on the podcast, I have with us Robb Sherwin.
Hey Robb, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Good. We've got we're Skyping. We're
Yes.
Skypers, Skype heads. I don't know I guess we're chatting. How about that opening monologue?
I thought it was absolutely amazing.
Wasn't it?
I had pants on, but I took them off for it. That's how good it was.
I don't have any on either, so
Outstanding.
I'm surrounded with Taco Bell wrappers and no pants. I look like a junkie. Just like Robb Sherwin, as some of you know, is an author of interactive fiction, several interactive fiction games. Robb, what all games have you released over the years?
Yeah, I've done a few games over the years in Hugo and Inform and TADS. The last big release I did was a game called Necrotic Drift, and I'm working on one right now, which I hope to release any day, called Crypto Zookeeper.
And are these all... I know the answer to this, but for our audience's sake, I guess I should say that they're not all strictly text adventures like in the old school sense with interactive fiction. Some of the languages now allow you to add some sort of multimedia features in these games as well.
Yeah, there's a few of them that have a graphical component to them, and I tried to get actors to play the parts of some of the characters, and that kind of it comes back to like what you are nostalgic about and what you played when you were growing up. And for me, I did play the Infocog games, which were for the most part straight text, but there were a lot of Magnetic Scrolls games as well, which all had graphics. So for me, when I went to go do them again as an adult, I was thinking back along the lines of, man, it would be awful nice to put in some pictures, humiliate my friends by having them play people, becoming just very, very creepy towards women by constantly asking them to play as people in the game too. So yeah, they do, a few of them do have pictures. It takes forever to get one of those done. So I think after getting done the one that has pictures, I try to go back just to straight text.
Has anybody regretted being in any of your games? I mean, as far as like the pictures and stuff, or
I know my brother who played the main character in Fallacy of Dawn. There was over about a year and a half of him having to constantly wear the Old Man Murray shirt, which did not fit him very well. He hated that thing, and he would. Well, you know how brothers are. Brothers will fight, and he hated it by the end, but I couldn't take a poke at him because I didn't want to get blood on that shirt. I kind of needed that. So I think he's the only one. I think for the most part, everybody else, I'll ask them for a picture or something. I take their picture. It's in a game. Nobody actually plays these things, so it never really comes up. So I think there's family.
And just so everybody knows, I have a standing offer to be an actor in one of Robb Sherwin's games. I'm ready.
Right.
I'm like a stand-in.
You'll be the main character.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
And with Photoshop, you can make me better looking.
Yes. There's a guy in the one I'm working on right now who does not have a Hitler mustache in real life. But I thought this game's taking place in the future. I think that mustache is going to come back. It's going to make we'll see it again. So yeah, I did use Photoshop to give him a toothbrush mustache, I suppose is the proper term. And so yeah, I've had to go through and manipulate him that way throughout the whole game.
Well, one of the things we kind of before we started, we wrote down a loose outline of topics to talk about. And one of the things we put down was our personal history with playing text adventures. I guess I should we should talk about what the difference is, or what your opinion of the difference between text adventures and interactive fiction. I know that with this recent resurgence that I just recently found, I guess, over the past year or so, that interactive fiction is different than text adventures. I kind of used the terms interchangeably before, but what do you see the difference between those two things? I mean, they're similar, but I guess there's some differences.
I just I think for me, if I think that I'll immediately get made fun of by using the word text adventures, I'll probably use the word interactive fiction instead. I don't know. To me, it's all kind of the same way to describe it.
Yeah, I thought that for me, text adventure, I don't know, I guess it's because that was a term I grew up with, but it reminds me more of like the 2-word commands, like get lamp, like as we'll be talking about later, or go west, those type of things. And the adventure part was because every game was basically it was an adventure, like you had to find your way through a forest or to do this or do that, but there was a set start and end. Whereas with a lot of the games that have been released over the last 10 years, and with this term interactive fiction, the storylines seem to be a lot deeper and a lot more involved and better, more focus on the writing or the storytelling, I guess, than some of the older games.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's a great way to put it. I think you're right.
So,
Yeah.
so when what's your history with text adventures? Like, when did you start playing the text adventures?
I didn't really start till we got a PC Junior as a family. Like, I think you were. Did you start out? You started on a TRS.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, you were probably playing long before I was.
Well, I started playing text adventures more or less out of necessity. I mean, that was
Okay.
the base model came with 4K of RAM, and it could be expanded up to 48K. The actual output, or we had a TRS-80 Model 3, so it had the built-in monitor, and so for text, in the normal text mode, it was 32 characters wide by 16 lines tall, and in the graphic mode, the resolution was 128 by 48. So, graphical type games. I mean, I thought of pixels, like pixels back then were like a spacebar cursor, like the full size one now. You know, I mean, like a giant block. And even more common were games that were created like with ASCII characters. Like I remember a racing game where your car was just the number 8 with a colon on each side to represent the tires, and then the road was made out of forward slashes and back slashes. So there were a lot of games like that that just used ASCII characters. So when text adventures hit the home market, it was like, I mean, the graphics, one thing that people have always said about text adventures and really, I mean, about reading, is that the graphics in your head are better than anything, you could do on a computer. And back then it was really true. I mean, because, with just a paragraph, you could say, there's a haunted house in front of you, etc., and or something that you could never seriously depict with the, the available computing power or whatever that you had.
Yeah. Did you back in the day, like, were you trading wares on the TRS-80 as well, or did that was that more? It wasn't until you got to the Apple 64 where you were old enough to. Do you ever remember trading Infocom, or not Infocom, like Scott Adams games on the?
I think most of the stuff we bought at that time, well, at the very beginning with the TRS-80, the games were so inexpensive. I mean, you could go to Radio Shack and, even a lot of the games that they sold, there wasn't even any packaging. It would just be like a cassette tape in a Ziploc bag, with a label on it that would say such and such adventure, and it would be $2 or $3 or something, or you could buy these little I don't know what you would call it, like a miscellaneous tape that might have multiple games on it, Yeah. And I mean, in the early days, the TRS-80 days, a lot of programs, you would type in from a magazine or whatever and then save it on your own cassette. So there wasn't, we didn't, with our TRS-80, and we only had it for a couple of years, but we didn't have a disc drive. We only had a cassette tape drive, so I don't think there was a big cassette wear scene. not that I was any part of. But yeah, once you got to the, we went from that to the Apple, and then I kind of split off to the Commodore before my dad moved from the Apple to the PC. So there was a time where we had an Apple, a Commodore, and a PC all in our house at the same time. But
wow.
But we also had modems and things like that. So by that time, people were trading stuff, and I think part of why, I don't know, I know a lot of people think back to the classic text adventures like Infocom and stuff like that, but I think I was just a little young maybe for that scene. Because I mean, when I was in Commodore stuff, I mean, starting off 11, 12 years old, I would have much rather played Pac-Man or Donkey Kong or something like that than read. So
reading wasn't going to get you anywhere. So
yeah, right. Who needs it? Stupid words. And so yeah, I don't know. But then it was interesting you talked about magnetic scrolls, because I remember those games having a huge impact. There was The Pawn, wasn't that
Yes.
one of their first big ones? And then there was a sequel to that.
Yeah, Guild of Thieves was their sequel.
Yeah. And they did that weird. It was like a kind of like a. Well, they weren't the first people to do it, but they had such amazing graphics. But they would do that split screen where it would show graphics at the top, and then a certain amount of text at the bottom.
Right. Yeah, that was like, I don't know about you, but I always thought that was extremely frustrating to try to play it in that way, because the resolutions of the monitors that we had simply weren't big enough to give you enough space to...
Right, yeah, like you only got a few lines of text or something, or...
Right, yeah. So you would go and like I found myself playing them with the graphics taking up most of the screen initially. Then I would see all the pictures, and then sort of like go back when I would start over or get killed or something, and play with the graphics not taking up so much room, just so I could read a little bit better, and have more text on the screen to figure out what was going on.
Right, and I guess one thing that a lot of people don't think about now is that there was such a there was loading times involved in that. So if you were trying to play a game, then it would sit there and it might take 10 or 20 seconds, before that picture would pop up.
Right.
So once you'd seen the picture, it wasn't that big of a deal. Right. You know what I mean? I mean, you saw it once and it was cool, but then after that, you just wanted to play the game.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So what other text adventures like from that era? I mean, were there ones that stand out to you, or I don't know, made an impact?
Well, for the games that we played, that, and when I say we, I just mean my brother and I, like nobody else in the family, to this day, are big fans. But we would have some that were made in BASIC, or you could see that obviously somebody typed them in from a magazine. And it's funny because there was nothing else to do when we were growing up. So a horrible game would get a lot of play because there wasn't anything, like we weren't going to go outside, so there was nothing else to really do. I remember there was one game. It was called Alien. It was written in BASIC, but when I would look at the source code to it, the BASIC code did a lot of Go subs, which I now know means launch a subroutine. But back then, it was pretty much machine language as far as I was concerned. It was like, oh, I'm not following this along. And it was this horrible game that you could get killed just by walking into rooms. They're loaded with spelling errors. But my brother and I would hot seat that, and we would play it for a bit, get stuck, and the other one would take over. And that's the one that I remember best. And so like, and then of course you don't want the nostalgia for a cruddy game that you played 25 years ago, but you get it anyway. And so sometimes, not at the job that I have now, but at previous jobs, when there's nothing to do, you're like, man, you know what I had to do? I had to re-implement that BASIC game in Hugo. But I still don't really understand BASIC Go subs command. So
those wacky Go subs.
Right, yeah. That's going to be tough, like when they look through my internet logs at work. So why were you looking for Go subs? That's going to be, yeah. I
remember our neighbors across the street also had a Commodore, and they were never like into the wares or anything like that. I mean, in fact, they were one of the first people I saw that had a Commodore 64, and you could just at a basic screen you could use change colors and draw the graphics and things, and so a lot. I mean, when I used to go over there in the early days, they would just draw these huge pictures, but not in a way that they could be saved or anything. I mean, they would just do like weird like non-computer type things, But the brother across there were four brothers, and one was the youngest one was the same age as me, and then each one was older, and we had got a copy of The Farmer's Daughter, which I don't know if you've ever.
No, I haven't heard of that one. Yeah, in fact, like when we were talking about the kind of games beforehand, I'm like, you've had a list of games that I've never heard of. So please tell me about this Farmer's Daughter.
Farmer's Daughter was just this, the old stereotype, the joke of like the traveling salesman, who goes to the farmhouse and ends up trying to hook up with the farmer's daughter, and that was the entire game. That was the point of the whole game. But as far as like looking back now, as far as text adventures, I mean, it was actually, the mechanics of the game were pretty good. I mean, you had to really think through, but at the time, this was long before long before the internet or anything like where you could just find a walkthrough or anything like that. So we would just try over and over to score with the farmer's daughter. But and it was a Commodore text adventure, and now I guess it's if you look it up, it says, like when you load it up, it says also coming soon from this company, a second game, and I've looked and I can't find the second game, so I think it was just a one. Farmer's Daughter didn't sell enough for for the sequel. There's no sequel to Farmer's Daughter. That was
going to be tough. Yeah, when they all got brought into the conference room after it launched a few months later, and they had to look at the figures, and they're like, "Yeah, sorry guys,
right,
we're going to have to let you all go." And yeah, they're hoping to get onto the Soft Porn 3 development team or something. But, yeah, and it's a very awkward meeting.
Of course, like back then, where you had Custer's Revenge for the Atari 2600 or Farmer's Daughter, those type of games, like you could launch that with a serious face, like, well, what's your idea? Well, it's a game about trying to have sex with a underage farmer's daughter. Yeah, to send that to marketing. And now, I guess by the time the second game, the winds have changed.
I do love the idea that if somebody worked on a text game, sex game that didn't work, and he was like, screw this. I mean, they're doing graphics in the Atari. The only input is the paddle.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah.
And then one I remember playing several times was Rambo.
Okay.
But since I was so young, I hadn't seen the movie yet, and so a lot of the things that you were supposed to do in the game were like reenactments of scenes from the movie. Sure. So I remember, and this is something, and I kind of want to talk about this a little bit later on, about your maybe your philosophy as far as like writing games and specifically when it comes to like killing players.
Sure.
Or the reason I bring that up, in Rambo, the game starts and you have parachuted down into a field, and you hear guys coming and you have your gun, and so you have about 3 moves to perform, and then I would get killed. It was like the enemy shows up, they knew where you were, and they killed you. And so I would just play the game over and over, but I never got more than 4 moves into it, and so after a couple of years, I got tired of that, the same 4 moves or whatever. But I have since found a walkthrough that lists, all the commands to beat the game. And apparently, in that opening scene, there's a hollow log, and you're supposed to remove your parachute and stuff it in the hollow log. And the parachute is what was giving away your location. But, at the time, it didn't seem like, and maybe that, I don't even think that happened in the movie, but now that I think about it. But, it was like, and to be honest with you, and I've had this conversation before, but once we got seriously into like downloading games and stuff, if a game stunk or wasn't that much fun, I just moved on, because there were so many games coming in. I mean, a single disc, you might have 5 or 10 games on it, Yeah. So, you get killed 4 moves into Rambo. After 10 or 15 minutes, I'm done with Rambo. It's time to move on to something else. But
the Viet Cong is going to win the war again in Rambo, just like they did in real life.
Exactly.
The next game.
It's going to move on.
Sorry about that slide. But yeah. No, I had the same thing with the game Borrowed Time, which was a graphical text game. It came out, I think, around. I think it used the same. I don't want to say it used the same engine as Task Times and Tone Town, because I think it was just like. They looked a lot alike. It was the same sort of thing. You could play for a bit, but you would get killed very, very quickly because you had so many enemies. And I kind of knew on some level that if I kept solving the mysteries and solving the puzzles, I'd be able to survive longer. But it was just nice being able to walk around the virtual Borrowed Time world.
Yeah.
But I would get killed. So, and again, there was nothing else to play. So, It would just get loaded up again and again and again.
Well,
And I took a look at that game as an adult a few years ago, and I'm like, oh, actually, this kind of sucks. This is not that great.
And I didn't play it that much, but I did play Task Times in Tone Town, which you mentioned, and I kind of have that same memory. Like, I don't remember ever beating it or ever like even getting very far, but it was just being submersed in that world, especially because that was like kind of it was like the 80s version of what we thought the future would be like. Like we would all have purple hair and giant sun. It was like the Back to the Future, yes. With the we would all have the Vegematics on the back of our car and puffy clothes. All trends I plan on bringing back this year, 2011. The year of purple hair, right? But I don't know. Some of those games, I don't know how you did playing the old text adventures, because I do have a lot of memories of playing a lot of them, but I don't have a lot of memories of beating a lot of them.
Right. I think one of the Infocom guys in GetLamp said something to the effect of they would get mail from people who said how much they love Zork, but they never actually went into the White Building. So I think it wasn't that rare for people just to wander around these things, take in the environment and enjoy it, and have leave 90% of the game unplayed.
Right.
It's weird like that though, because you would never just, I don't know, you wouldn't restart the first level of Battletoads over and over and over again and say, wow, what a great game, this is awesome, I can't get enough. There's something about text adventures where if you're not seeing everything, it's probably not the case today, but 25 years ago, if you didn't see everything, that did not necessarily mean that you thought the game sucked.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
I think a lot of games, well, especially with the current generation of gaming consoles, has put such this huge, and combined, I should say, with playing online, but this whole the trophy system or award system, things like that, where you get achievements or whatever, and so that kind of pushes people into, well, I have to have 100% of this game. I have to do every single part, where back then it was just it was almost like I don't want to say a novelty, but I don't know, it's hard to explain, but in something like in Donkey Kong, let's say, if you were coding a clone of Donkey Kong, you would have to figure in which way the barrels go. You would have to program in, what happened, like the arc maybe of Mario's jump and things like that. But you would never have to program in what happens if Mario calls a timeout and decides to go to the coffee shop. And you know what I mean? Like, that's not possible. And the game is so, it's like when you look at the game, you see there's no way to break out of, you're on that level and your goal is to get from point A to point B. But in a text adventure, when you're just plopped into this world, it's almost like a virtual reality type thing, where part of the enjoyment is just exploring the world. It's not necessarily getting from point A to point B. That's a weird point. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it totally does. I know what a lot of people like about that Infocom game, A Mind Forever Voyaging, is that you're given some tasks to do in the beginning of the game, but your tasks are all along the lines of go experience what we think the world is going to look like 20 years into the future and then 40. Mm-hmm. So it was somewhat puzzle-less, and a lot of the pleasure that you got from the game was walking around, hanging out, and seeing things, and interacting with that world. So yeah, no, I'm totally with you.
Yeah, and Alter Ego, I don't know if you ever played that. It's not really a text adventure, I guess, but
yes.
It was similar in that type of, where you made these choices and then you kind of like built a character. You know what I mean? Like, it could be you. And the first time everybody plays it, I think they play themselves. They
right.
choose what they would choose, and then they live through. And then, subsequent playthroughs, you kind of, maybe get a little bit more daring with your choices or whatever. But it was kind of similar idea, I guess.
Yeah, there was when I went to Seattle PAX last year, there was a guy there, and I apologize for not remembering his name, but he brought Alter Ego to the iPhone. I don't want to say that he ported it over, because I can't remember off the top of my head if he added more scenarios and choices and stuff, but yeah, that's available and out there on a modern system as well. Yeah, Alter Ego is such a great game.
Yeah.
Different than anything else I can ever remember. Like unique in how it's set up and how you pick what you want to do, and the sense of loss you get when you mess up and die. And because I'm pretty sure it didn't have any sort of saving.
No,
save it.
No, I don't think so. And I think Alter Ego and text adventures. One thing that I don't know, I think made them more interesting personally is that they were usually, I guess, created by a single person or a couple of people, So I don't know. I like the cohesion, I guess. Right. You kind of got the person's voice, like whoever was writing the game, like Alter Ego or whatever. You just kind of got that feeling versus, like a game now that might have 100 people or 500 people or something working on it. It just doesn't seem like like you're not going to get 500 people to sign up to make Farmer's Daughter 2. That's not happening.
I wish that was the virtual world we lived in. But,
if we could find 498 more people, we could make it happen. Because I'm in. I would do it.
Agreed.
If you'll write it, I'll be in the game. You can take the pictures. I could be the farmer. Maybe, I don't know. But I could be in that.
It does seem like the most difficult person to cast is going to be the daughter, especially if they get a plot description ahead of time.
Right.
I'll get started on it. Begin weekly updates and get the scrum going.
I'm in. So, was there a specific time when you? I know that there was like, I guess what a lot of people call the classic period of text adventures. With like the 80s, that kind of era. Scott Adams, Infocom. I got to talk about Scott Adams too.
Okay. I have not. I could ask you a bunch of questions on Scott Adams because I don't know if I've ever played any of his games other than those Quest Probe.
Yeah. Scott Adams wrote Adventure or Adventureland, yes. Right? So whenever we have that on our TRS-80, so that's like my first experience with text adventures was Adventure, and it was. I don't know. That for me, it kind of like started everything for me. You know what I mean? Like that was when I sat down to a personal computer, I was like, "Oh, this is what this is about." You can create stuff and you can interact with the computer. It was like every part of the computer that it kind of all fell into that game. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then we would go to Radio Shack. I mean, one of the biggest problems with the early computers was there wasn't that much software available. You could get things mail order, or Radio Shack was the only place we could get it locally. And so there would be a new Scott Adams text adventure, and we would go get that. And after a few, then he released. I can see this. It was like a binder that opened up, and there were 6 cassette tapes on each side, and they had these gold labels on it. And it was the Scott Adams Gold Collection, and it had all of his games all in this one binder. And it came with a autograph photo of Scott Adams with his arm around this monster that
awesome.
has been airbrushed, into the picture or whatever. And almost as impressive as the monster is Scott Adams' giant afro. Which, I mean, for a white guy, it's very impressive. It's a very impressive hairdo.
Nice.
But yeah, so it's funny to me that a lot of people, I mean, when they talk about the beginning of text adventures, everybody goes back to Zork.
Yeah.
But this really predates that. If nothing else, I mean, the Infocom guys will tell you that they played Scott Adams adventures, Yeah. So I think some of that stuff was going on at the same time. But in my personal timeline, it was Scott Adams. I played Scott Adams games for 2 years on the TRS-80, and then we moved to the Apple, and then that's where I encountered Zork. So. His games were it was definitely the old school type of game. So it was 2-word commands, like go here, do this, and lots of guess the verb type situations,
Did he kill the player fairly often? If that you remember?
Yeah.
Or was it? Okay.
Yeah, all the time.
Oh,
All the time.
killing us now.
For me, right. And the Haunted House game, which I talked about in Commodore a little bit, but that game would kill you repeatedly. I mean, it was terribly difficult to get through. And the worst part about that game was that, and I don't know if it was a limitation on how much data the cassette tape could store, or if it was how much RAM the computer had. But the game was divided into two sides. I mean, it was split. So to play the first half of the game, you had to load the entire first side of the cassette in, which was like somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes, you know? So you would go do whatever you're going to do, right? Come back, and then you would play through, and it was a 2-story house. So you would play through the bottom story of the house, and then eventually you would find stairs that would went up to the second floor. And when you did that, it would say flip the tape over and load the second side. So now you have another 20, 25, 30-minute wait, right? And you load it in, and then at the top of the stairs, the very first room, there was this floating knife. I mean, it said, you know, you come to the top of the stairs, there's a knife floating in front of you. And so you're like, you know, so you type examine knife, and then it says, well, the knife flies across the room and slashes your throat, the end. Please flip the cassette tape over and reload side 1. And you're like, are you kidding? So you had to flip the tape over, load another 30 minutes, play the whole bottom floor, go up the stairs, and then you had one shot. Well, then, you know, flip the tape over and load the second floor. And then you had one shot, and if you missed it, the knife would slash your throat. And, you know, so, yeah, that became my dad was also, you know, into text adventures. I mean, he introduced me to a lot of this stuff. And, you know, between he and I, you know, I could lay in my bed and hear him cursing, you know, at 2 in the morning. Ah, stupid knife, you know, and things like that. But the right answer was get knife. And so if you typed get knife, it would say, okay, you have the knife. And that was it, you know. But I don't know how many different things we tried, you know, at an hour a time. So definitely a different experience back then, yeah.
I had a friend who had a Commodore, so we would go to his house to play games, and we got the full joy of the 1541 drive, taking forever to load stuff.
Yeah.
But this was before, or this was after cassettes.
Right.
I guess were picked. So I missed out on all of this. This is amazing to me. But you got one move.
It was terrible.
Otherwise, that's wow.
And yeah, you know, I had a cassette. I joke, but I tell people I had a cassette tape on the Commodore for about 7 minutes, and it may have been longer than that. But I mean, I had friends that had data sets. That was the Commodore brand, was the data set, and I knew I didn't want that, so I got my uncle had a Commodore 64, and the sound died, and so he was gonna buy a new one. And I think he might have decided to switch to Apple or something. But for whatever reason, he said I could have it if we would pay to get it fixed. And so I did that, and it was like a month before my birthday or something, and I really didn't do anything. And then on my birthday, I got a disc drive. So I really, I started with the disc. Now, I know that, like, especially like in Europe, the cassette, I mean, a lot of people, it was a big cassette scene over there, but as far as in the States, I don't know anybody who is a serious computer user that stuck with the cassette tape for very long, you know. That was awful.
Right, yes.
But anyway, what I started saying before was there was like kind of this golden age of text adventures with Infocom for sure, you know, and then there's kind of this resurgence, or at least an appearance of a resurgence. I guess it's been going on longer than just the last year, which is kind of a lot of people's perception after the release of Get Lamp. But so when did you kind of fade away from playing text adventures?
I think when I went off to college in 1992, and I remember, let's see, I think EA Sports had their games 1 year in advance. Like, the name of it was 1 year in advance.
Right.
What actual year it was, even back then.
Mm-hmm.
So when NHL 94 came out, which I want to say was at the beginning of 93, that was pretty much all my computer at college ran. It was just that. It's certainly not any, it didn't bring up Microsoft Word or anything. But no, we used it to print out. We used the printer in order to print out picking the NFL games, and we'd play hockey on it. And so I think at that point, I definitely did not pick up any text adventures new. I don't think they were making a whole lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody was making them, it would have been, I guess, Legend. So it was a dark time for text games, but I wasn't thinking much about them either.
Yeah.
So that whole time in college was one where I really didn't do much with text games or think about them that much.
Yeah. See, I got out way before that for sure,
Okay.
because, and like I said, maybe it was just it just missed even though we're the same age group, but I don't know. I thought of text adventures as being at that time. Not as something that was created because people wanted to create them, but they were created out of the limitations of the computer. In other words, we're using Skype to talk today because you can't teleport and be here at my house instantly. But if you could, then we wouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? So once, for me, like, once it got into Wizardry, and then from there, like the Bard's Tale series and Ultima also,
role-playing games got a lot better.
Yeah, that kind of replaced
amazing at that point.
Yeah, it was like that was kind of like what I thought text adventures were doing. You know what I mean? Like as far as Bard's Tale, where you would say, okay, well, they had these crude dungeon crawler type games that were text adventures, where you would go this way and that way, and there would be traps and things like that. And once you could see that in Bard's Tale and you could have your little party, then I just kind of quit playing the text adventures.
Totally. Yeah, my dad brought home a EGA monitor one night, completely unexpected, and we loaded up Bard's Tale, saw all of 16 colors, and we definitely were not, thinking, I wonder what Zork 2 is going to look like in EGA. We sort of, at that point, kind of forgot.
Right.
About text games for a bit. It's funny because in Getland, people will make the argument that your imagination can have the best graphics, and you know what? I agree to that to some extent. But still, when you have been looking at just the awful graphics, especially for PC, because you had as bad as it was on the Commodore 64. It was much worse just on the PC in the PC Junior. So to get anything that would come up and look as nice as the original Bard's Tale in color, just that hypnotizes you to some extent, and really makes you want to go after those and just enjoy the new. You felt like you're in the future.
Yeah. Of course, my dad's old joke. As a PC guy was, it'll do 4 colors as long as 2 of them were black and white, so you had that one, the weird, I think it's the same palette you have on the front page of your website with the purple and the turquoise, and then it was...
Yeah, we had, speaking of the 4 colors, we had a game, Adventure Construction Set, which would let you pick any of the 4 colors on the PC to use. And I remember having an argument with myself once. I'm like, well, I could probably get away not using white. That would give me, yellow in addition to blue and purple. So there's a resource management sim and a construction set at the same time.
One of the biggest disappointment programs, and it's funny because of all the things that I've downloaded over the years, for free. Yeah. And then every now and then, like, something would come out that I would really want to support. And then I go buy it, and it's terrible. I don't know why it works out like that. But I bought Bard's Tale Construction Set.
Yes.
Which came out, and boy, it was just... the biggest disappointment for me was... and this was at I don't know when that was, like 92, 93, somewhere around there. We're definitely in the VGA era and doing graphics. And the only graphics it supported was... like their own proprietary, like deluxe paint for the PC, which nobody owned. You couldn't import, no GIFs, no PCX files, anything like that, And so It was like it was like Apple now. It was like you can create whatever you want as long as it falls in our little box of.
God, I remember when I first moved to Colorado. It was about 1998. The Barstow construction set had been out for a while, and I was really getting the itch to make computer games. And I said to myself, I'm either going to go forward with Inform, the text adventure language, or this Barstow construction set, but I'm going to give them both a fair shot. And I tried to find some sort of community of Bard's Tale construction set enthusiasts, and didn't really seem to exist. And then, using the program is so awkward.
Oh yeah. I was so because the first time I loaded, like, if it's Bard's Tale construction set, you would think the easiest thing to do with it would be to like recreate Bard's Tale, which if I'd started in '93, I would still be working on. They couldn't have possibly have written Bard's Tale with the Bard's Tale construction set. I was so disappointed with that. But so when did you, I guess, decide that you wanted to start writing? Well, I guess writing games in general, and then what made you decide that you wanted to write these types of games?
It kind of goes back to what you were saying about how one person can make a text adventure, and the result that you get doesn't look quite as janky as one person trying to make a first-person shooter or a sports game or something.
Right.
It seemed like they were the easiest to make. When I got a hold of Graham Nelson's instruction manual, the Informed Designer's Guide, it was such a marvelous book to not only teach you how to program, but why you would want to create certain things and how you can do them in Inform. And I think that book, more than anything else, really got me passionate about trying to learn how to program and do a little bit of object-oriented programs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just such a wonderful thing that he put together there. And then at the same time, the games that people had started to make with Inform were really, really good and really fun. And that was a community that I thought I wanted to be a part of. Like when Adam Kodrick came out with Interstate Zero, just a really funny game. And gave you a wonderful experience of going through a virtual world. And the jokes in it were hilarious. And I thought, well, it seems... And at one point, he had the source code available to it. So I had like everything I needed in order to get going with them. I had source code that I could look at if I got stuck. I had a wonderful manual to teach me what it is I wanted to do. And at the time, this was important. You were able to turn a inform.z5 file into an executable, like a Windows executable. So that doesn't matter now, of course.
Okay.
But back then, that was pretty great because you could give it to people and they could just click on it and run it.
Right.
So all those things were really just running up the score as to why Inform seemed like a great way to go back then.
I wrote my little GitLamp interactive review in Inform, and mm-hmm. I guess I never I don't do a lot of. I mean, I do some VB programming and stuff like that, but for the most part, I do, like at work, I do a lot of scripting, but I don't do any object-oriented coding, So, looking at Inform, I mean, putting all the pieces together, even as a first-time writer, I thought, and I'm not saying, that I'm a master of it by any stretch of the imagination, but just being able to sit down and look through the manual and stuff, it was fairly easy to put together a game that worked. Yeah,
they've done a wonderful job with that. It's you can really just get going. You can get your first room built. You can give the player character a name. You can type a swear word into the program, and it very, very quickly.
Right, and the being, I guess as from a player standpoint, it seems kind of magical to like, okay, well, there's a chair there, and you can sit in the chair or stand or move the chair, but you can't take the chair, those sorts of things where you think, whoever programmed it must have put in just a huge amount of work just to handle how you would, interact with the chair. But then on the back side, it's really not that, especially, right. You just give it properties and say this is, a piece of furniture, and it acts like furniture. And so they've taken a lot of the heavy lifting out of it for you.
Yeah, and they also, they're doing that with Inform 7 as well. Like, there's so many extensions now that you can just include by saying, include such and such by Eric Eve. Like an example of that, so I was dorking around with Inform 7 a couple weeks ago, and I thought, without doing much on my part, I was able to create just a little program that had a complete working computer that Emily Short developed that would allow you to send and receive email through the game, like not like email that we would get, but just all internal email, and run searches. So like if you wanted to search for something and have text come back, it would do that. There was another plugin that handled getting the game text to work in the first person as opposed to the second person, which most games are like. Just all this stuff that you could get for free by just typing in a sentence and downloading it from the Inform 7 site. It's just astounding. There was something for the status menu so that you could always know which directions you had available, which I've had to program in the game that I'm working on right now for Hugo on a room-by-room basis. So to be able to just drop a library in and have that go, it's really exciting. It's really cool for new authors to be able to have access to all these powerful things without really much effort on their part.
And these, I know you've mentioned Hugo. So there's Hugo, there's Inform. I know that there's TADS.
Yes.
Have you written in all those? Are there any? I know Inform. I know there's a Inform scene, but I'm not too familiar with the other ones. Are they all still? Are people using all those still? And are they? I mean, is there any advantage to using one over the other?
I think there are still communities about all three of those. There's another one called Adrift for people who maybe do not want to program, and I don't know the state of their community. I think they're still doing fine. But yeah, for Inform, TADS, and Hugo, I know the least about what TADS is like these days. I believe people are still writing TADS games, and I think there were some in the competition last year. The Hugo community is mostly, there's probably less than a dozen of us, but we all get on the interactive fiction mud and help each other with our problems. With our problems in Hugo, not like our other. Although I suppose. So yeah, we'll help each other with stuff. John Blask has done. He's Rudy Yogurt on my bulletin board there.
Okay.
He's done just amazing work getting some stuff going. Like for instance, I got and the thing I'm working on now, I had a list of creatures that you could pick from to go fight other people, and the list was not sorting. So a bunch of us in the Hugo community were like, okay, let's get some sort routines out. I looked at trying to do a bubble sort, even though everybody who I talked to before and since says that the bubble sort is the worst kind of sort.
Right.
It was the one that I learned in community college, and I just didn't get a chance to use it but yeah, it still sucks. They haven't really improved it much. But we got some sorting together. The manipulation of the screen and trying to get windows set up in Hugo. Some people have looked at. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Hugo's by far, you have to kind of know where to go in order to get help on it. But yeah, all three of them are still alive and kicking. It's pretty cool.
Neat. And I guess, I mean, everything to do with these is all free, which is something that amazed me, and even, I mean, there's so many forums out there of people that are willing to help you out or help test games or even come up with ideas, I mean, for putting stuff together. So it's pretty amazing.
The one cool thing about Inform is when Graham Nelson released it, he's essentially said, like, not in so many words, hey, look, you release it, you own it, basically implying no matter what kind of sadistic, terrifying game, no matter how sick it is. And you met Adam Thornton.
Yeah.
And we're, and so his game is it's delightfully sick. It's I'm trying to remember exactly what I told him. It's disgusting in a way which makes it's almost impressive with how sick the game he's working on right now. The new Stiffy McCain game. So no one's going to give him a hard time when he releases that. If he wanted to put it on a CD and sell it, or if he wanted to go into a dark alley and surprise people with it, he would be able to do that, and that's totally cool. That there's no restrictions at all on what you make in Inform and how you want to distribute it.
So, I wonder why did I don't know. This is kind of addressed, I guess, in Jason Scott's documentary Get Lamp, but it's kind of like text adventures. Maybe they didn't go away, but they went away from the average, computer gamer or whatever. It's like a lot of people just moved on. It might be, and it sounds bad, but a way to put it, where they moved on to other gaming genres and stuff like that. And so, do you think are we seeing a resurgence right now, or is it just because there's more attention on it from Get Lamp and other things?
I think that they went away for a while. I think because initially TADs, you had to register TADs at the very, very beginning.
Okay.
And that's always going to make some people not get into it, even if it's just $25 to let them create to let them create games that are amazing. That's going to put a few people off. In Form, I want to say in Form 6, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it was around 1994 or 1995 when that was released. So there was like a chunk of time where there really wasn't great tools to make games in the first place. But I think now they're like a good example is the game that won the interactive fiction competition this last year. And I haven't played it yet, but what I've been told is that the author took a look at all the extensions he could get for free that would help his game and place them in his game in order to make it very approachable. And a game by Aaron Reed called Blue Lacuna does the same thing, where it's going to try to help you play it. It's going to try to notice if you're being stuck and try to do things to get you into a situation where you get back on track and know what to type in. So I think they're becoming more approachable.
Yeah, my biggest pet peeve in gaming, it's not even a pet peeve, it will get me to stop playing a game almost immediately, is when I don't know where I'm supposed to be going or what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
In something like, like we talked about Bard's Tale. In Bard's Tale, you're in Scarebray, and they would say, okay, well, you need to go, somewhere in this town. There's a thing. Well, I'm willing to do that because I know what the parameters are. You do this, or
it's snowing out. Everybody's thirsty. You got to kick somebody's ass.
Right.
Awesome. Let's go.
Yeah, right. Super Mario Brothers. I know I need to keep going right. And that's all I need. There may be obstacles and pipes and things to jump on or whatever, but I know that ultimately I need to get to the right until I can't go right anymore, And then
right.
when Mario 64 came out with the Nintendo 64, I was lost. It was like this open 3D area, and I didn't know where I was supposed to go, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I've literally played that game probably less than 10 or 15 minutes. I've gone back to it a few times, but it's just that weird openness of not knowing what I'm supposed to be doing that turns me off, And so with text adventures, I've heard that from people before. If you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, then people just kind of give up. So that's interesting that they're putting that in games now.
Yeah, it's that is the one thing that I don't like about text adventure games in general, is that ideally I should know exactly what to type in after the initial text comes up. Oh, but okay, so that can be tough to do. But within the first 5 moves, I'd really better have a goal in mind. And if I don't, I'm going to set that game down. And maybe I'll come back to it at some point. But we have so many options now that we didn't when we were kids. And I think a text game, especially in a sub-marginal genre like text adventures, it really ought to go out of its way to let you know that you've got a goal in mind that you can be working towards right from the beginning.
Right, yeah. We don't need to make them
less approachable. I think a lot of them don't do that these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so you're going to say what? We don't
need to make them less approachable at this point, But
it's tough, yeah, because there's a tendency that, you start your game off, your player doesn't know anything, and you want to be on your player's side, so maybe your dude has amnesia, or maybe your player character doesn't know what's going on. But we've seen so many games like that where, I don't know, my philosophy is give enough backstory to the player, try to make the player laugh, or try turn the player on, or try to give them some reason to keep going at the beginning. After a few moves, they'll figure out if your voice is one that they want to be locked in a room with for a while. But that is something that I think can be improved.
And that's an interesting problem, because I've been working on a text adventure, and so trying to merge the two worlds of a character in a story that should know things about his or her world, and conveying that to a player that doesn't know the things. For example, in the game I was working on, or am working on, there's a car, and you can go certain places, but you have to come over the logistics of how to get from one. I mean, like how to get to the store. I mean, as a person, and then as a person in this game, you know what I mean? So you shouldn't make that a puzzle, because that's something you ought to be able to do. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, exactly.
It's like the graphical equivalent of this is like every first-person shooter I've ever played, where I can, I have a machine gun and I do all this, and then I used to play Ghost Recon a lot, and so you're running, and then all of a sudden there's like this rickety fence that's 2 foot tall, and I can't go over it. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I'm part of the world's elite soldier squad, and I can't kick this fence over or climb over it? No, you got to go all the way around, and so it's those weird kind of things that in a real world don't make sense, and that it's those things that immediately mentally take you out of the game.
Yeah. I think what text adventures can do best for that is to make the simplest thing work. Like it's from a programmer standpoint, it could be interesting the first time you implement a car, and a person's got to get the key and put the key in, and then depress pedal with foot. And
right.
But nobody wants to do that. The simplest thing is just like drive to store, to type that in, or drive car, and maybe that sets you up for failure if someone who has played 1,000 of these things actually does try to insert key into keyhole or whatever. But just being able, if the player expresses a concept in very simple terms and you make that work, you at least will not have a frustrated player.
Right.
So there's that at least.
So well, the way that I got around it was I put a GPS in the car. So when you
okay.
So you
say that's very interesting to me. So he's in the car and you have a GPS.
Right.
So like in order to go to the store, what is and I don't mean to like totally spoil your game or anything. We can cut this part out if these are huge spoilers.
That's all right.
How did you get the GPS working with the drive verb and stuff like that?
Well, pretty much I circumvented all that.
Okay.
And I used the talk plugin. So like when you talk to someone, and then like you had done in some of your games where in the Chicks game. So when you talk to somebody and then you got certain choices back.
Got it.
So the GPS is voice activated. So you talk to
totally,
right.
That's cool.
So it's it's a way around the problem.
Yeah.
So you talk to the GPS and it says where do you want to go, and then when you respond, then there's a little verbiage in there about okay, well now you drive to the store or whatever, But I if the puzzle was starting the car, I would have been willing to put more work into making a functional car. You know what I'm saying? Like
I do.
But I mean, for me, the car is just something that has to be there because you don't also live at the store. I mean, the player there has to be a logical way to get to the store. So, but I kind of wanted to just make it a seamless, get to the store, that sort of thing.
Right.
So.
No, I'm totally with you on the menu thing because it was like 3 years into making Crypto Zookeeper, and I realized that at one point the player was going to unlock 3 new areas to go to, and I'm thinking, oh my god, the last thing I want, I just want to get them there. So I just give them a menu. They go south to the end of the city. They get to pick fruit through 1 through 3. They go to the new areas, and because nobody cares, nobody's going to want to walk for 15 moves. So yeah, good old menu.
Yeah, I've run into that as I get closer to the end of the game.
Yeah.
Whereas, for the last 3 moves would do something, and I found that I didn't put any of the moves in the game. I just kind of wrote like, well, you did this and you did this and good job, you won, that sort of thing. And you kind of have to back up a little bit and let the players actually, play.
Right. No, yeah, totally. There's and again, not to spoil the thing I'm working on, but I've been working on it for so freaking long. And there was one part where the 5 main characters are stuck in an area, and the initial design document was hoping to have the actual player get some inspiration how to get out of the locked area. But then I'm coding this through and I'm thinking, well, all the non-player characters have really done is make fun of the main character of the whole game. Maybe they could, on their own, as part of a script, solve this tiny little puzzle and get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to run with that. That's fine. That means that the player for one section in this giant ass game just has to type Z for wait a few times. All right, that's fine.
So well, now I want to ask you about your game, and I know you don't want to. I don't want to spoil any part of it, but you said you've been working on it for years.
Yes. Yeah.
Both the ones I've been working on, I've worked on for about 12 minutes, and I feel like I put too much time into it. So
I'm so envious. I can't even begin to tell you. I like the next game. Well, like I told Jason Scott this. I said that if this game is a failure, then the next game I'm going to make is just going to be like a half-hour game called Text Fucking, and all it is going to be just all you can imagine.
Go in, go out, go in. You know what? We rebranded. It's Farmer's Daughter 2.
Right on.
So how did you get involved in Get Lamp? I guess we should talk about Get Lamp.
Sure.
Get Lamp is Jason Scott's documentary about text adventures, and it has interviews with Scott Adams and all the guys from Infocom and some people that played text adventures, and then a lot of people that are members of the current interactive fiction scene, authors of games and stuff. So how did the two of you hook up?
There's a thread on my bulletin board on Jill Country that Pinback started. He found out about Jason's previous documentary called the BBS documentary, and Pinback knew that I ran a BBS in Rochester, New York, in the 90s. So he just started the thread, put a link there, and said, hey, Rob, how come you're not in this documentary? And so I was vaguely aware of the BBS documentary, but I didn't know Jason at all. And it never occurs to me that anybody's actually going to find any of my websites.
Right.
So I talk an enormous amount of crap, and it's extremely cocky, and it makes me sick to read it years later. But I said something like, that's because the guy couldn't interview the system operator of every single bulletin board that ever existed, and no problem there, blah blah blah, whatever. And then I think I said something like, plus, looking at that thing, I think it was $50 at the time for a single documentary. Yeah. And so, that's way too much money. Totally speaking out my butt. Of course, I didn't know that there's 5 discs, 5 or 6 discs to this documentary. But he flew all over the world to go talk to people. That the packaging was the packaging was awesome. I had no idea. Well, he had a Google alert or something that let him know that we were talking about his movie. So he drops in, like, "Hey fellas, how's it going?" He then said, he clarified some things about the PBS documentary, which then caused some of my less civilized users to get into it with him. But he maintained his cool. I'm sure he's done this 100 times.
Right. Gone
into a community and then won them over by being pretty cool. And he said that his next one was going to be about text adventures. And he said, "Hey, Rob, you'll be contacted." And in fact, he bought a copy of Necrotic Drift from me, got my address, and sent me a copy of the BBS documentary, and then quoted what I said about the BBS documentary without knowing about it, like on the packaging, which was very funny. He's got a picture of it. It's somewhere on the net. But he flew out to Colorado to interview me and Paul O'Brien, and at the time he interviewed a guy. His first name is Kevin, and he runs the pinball place in Lyons, Colorado. And for the life of me, I can't remember his last name. But he had the idea, at that time for his arcade documentary as well. So he thought, hey, I'm coming out this way. I'll go interview a guy who is somehow keeping an arcade going in the year 2007 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's how that all got started, and how I met him and got involved in the project.
Well, that's good. And have you seen any effect? I guess. I mean, this is the bad. I mean, if there's any bad, I don't know that this is even bad, but
Sure.
Once the movie came out, I mean, there was a lot of build up, and then it's like everybody runs to those places. There's like this sudden surge of interest and stuff. It's like all these people, and then now it's like a lot of those people are kind of fading back away. You know what I mean? So, but I don't know if that's good or bad or just a side effect, I guess.
I think the only thing is that when I learned how to do Google alerts, I was really interested in what people said about GetLamp as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because if you don't care about modern text games, then there's whole sections of GetLamp which won't do anything for you.
Right.
And the reverse is true. There's some people who they don't care about the old school text games at all either. And what they really wanted to see, what they brought to the viewing of the documentary was what they thought it would be a discussion of the really great modern text games.
Mm-hmm.
And the documentary's not about that either. So yeah, every once in a while you'll get I'll get a little thing that shows up where somebody made an offhand comment about the movie. And if they're dissing the Infocom guys, I'm like, wow, most of them are rich. They can handle it. They're probably not this obsessed anyways.
Right.
F them. But then they'll be like, oh yeah, it would have been nice without all the modern players. And if I had more time, like if I didn't spend 5 years working on the same stupid game, that would make me jump on the forum and say, we're keeping this alive. Whatever. No, it's all good. It's there have been no negative things to come up from it in my perspective. And like, he interviewed me before King of Kong came out.
Mm-hmm.
When King of Kong came out, I'm like, wow, it's really possible for a documentary maker to totally make whoever's in their movie look like a bunch of ass bags. So we just got
Right.
lucky that Jason likes all of us. We were fortunate more than anything else. Well, we also knew that because he'd done VS as well.
Right, sure.
Them very, very well. But still, yeah. Yeah, it all worked. No, I think it all worked out. What did you think of the movie? Now, I get that I did play your review, but so you liked it for the most part. I would say that's fair.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was. I mean, I could say a million things that I liked about it. So just say
Sure.
that I liked almost everything about it.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't like about it is, and I realize from a historic standpoint it makes sense, but it just seemed really not Infocom heavy, because I think that's the reality.
Yes.
That's a reality as far as from a financial standpoint, or what
Sure.
like if you want to talk about who was selling text adventures, it was Infocom, and then and then whoever was in second place or third place was really far down the ladder, but I don't know, that was the only thing that I would have liked to see more of, was like the one-off guys, the farmer's daughter guys, or the because you were talking about some of the graphical text adventures. Like, I remember there was a Hobbit the type game, where it would have these pictures of Middle Earth and you would go around, and it was the same type of thing. Or the Rambo game that I used to play was put out by Mindscape, or at least published by them, so there were other companies doing it, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, I think it was more like either they dabbled in it, or it wasn't like, so as far as going back, I think Infocom guys are probably where the if you understand their story, I think you can kind of read between the lines and see the other stories. But that was the only thing, because from a player and a young player, as a kid, Infocom didn't mean anything more to me than Mindscape or Joe
Sure.
Blow's game or anything like that. So, as a kid and a player of text adventures, they were all equal,
Right.
So, but looking back, I can see why it has such a focus on that, but that was really the only thing. Seeing Scott Adams Jason interviewed Scott Adams, who, like we talked about, it's the first games that I played on a computer. I mentioned that on my website, and then posted the interactive review, which was a text adventure or a review, an interactive review written. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Written within form.
Yes, I'm with you. Yes,
which Scott Adams came and played, and then signed up for updates on my website. And I thought, that's it. I've made it. I don't need to do anything else. Screw the book writing. The podcast is over.
Fantastic.
That's it. Scott Adams has signed up for. I hope he listens to the podcast. I'm going to dig out that picture. You know what? This is funny. A few years ago, this really doesn't have anything to do with anything. But I've got to the point now with my dad, to where we both of us have everything we need in our lives, which has made buying gifts at Christmas time and things like that more. We have to put a lot more thought into it. It's not like, I can't just go to Best Buy and buy him a TV. He has a TV. He's 62. He has all, has a computer. He has all those things, right? And so I was bidding on a TRS-80 Model 3 on eBay,
Nice.
which was our first computer. And I had the whole deal set up, and I had emailed Scott Adams. And I said, if I win this, I'm going to ship it to your house. I want you to autograph it.
Oh, nice.
And then ship it to my dad. And then at the last minute, I got outbid on the stupid computer. And it ruined the whole thing. So
it wasn't by Scott Adams, was it?
no, it was someone else's computer.
No, you guys, I'm not signing nothing. Okay.
Exactly. But
that's funny. Yeah, it's funny because you would think that your story would be a unique one, Black, but right now there's somebody out there who's like, man, I'm so glad I got this TRS-80.
I know the bastard. They're like, look who I outbid. And then there was like this whole. It was a whole ordeal because and I'm taking this way. I don't know if I'll cut this out or not, but I went to. We have like a citywide garage sale thing, and it's like a once a year, where all the nonprofit organizations come and bring things. And so I went to that, and there was a TRS-80 there. And so it was like, my plan is going to be, like, I'm going to be able to do this, And so I bought it, and I got it home, and the monitor was dead. And it has, the built-in monitor.
Right.
And it's a 12-inch black and white monitor. It's not like I can just, go get one off the shelf or whatever. And I looked at it, and so, anyway, I had it in the back of my truck for like a month. Like I would just hang on to it because it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't do anything, but there's just something about seeing it that I was like, I can't get rid of this, And my one of the guys from my forum, the Icebreaker, came to visit, and we were going to thrift stores, and so we ended up throwing it away in a trash dumpster behind a Mexican restaurant. So that was the ultimate fate of the TRS-80. But I had such a hard time getting rid of it because I just, and that's where nostalgia and a lot of the stuff comes in, where it's like you just see it and you think, you remember. I remember playing those games, and I wanted it to work so bad, but it.
I'm sure it gave a delightful surprise to whoever was throwing out the old chimichanga sauce that
right
night.
Out.
The Mexican place.
Some guy behind Los Compadres, and there it was, right there. So yeah, that was.
How much was that? How much was what did the TRS-80 get up to? Do you remember on eBay?
You know what? I remember thinking I'm in for about $100.
Okay,
so right around there. So it must
have
be just just a little. Well, I think it was like $100, and then it was going to be like $60 for shipping, or something. I mean, because I was going to have to ship it twice.
Yeah,
and they're not. Yeah, they're not, and with the built-in monitor and all that, they're not light. So it was a disappointment. But you know what? I forwarded Scott Adams' email to my dad, so that was like it's kind of a second place. It's not like the autograph computer, but what can you do?
Well, we'll keep our eyes open for another TRS-80, and as long as the eBay description doesn't say something that, it smells like a Taco Bell, we'll know that.
Right, I know where that one's been.
And,
that one doesn't work.
Yeah. Got one down. Yeah.
I should have marked it somehow, so because that would be my lot, is that I would buy the same one again, And I'm like, and it has free holies in the drive or something like that, but...
I've been trying to get a copy of Ootopus. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. It's OO-TOPOS for years now, just like a box copy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how some of the stuff, I don't know where they got their idea, asking for the kind of money that they're asking for. It seemed like the TRS-80, that did seem reasonable, like $100
Right.
for a computer like that work. That seemed very reasonable. Some of the stuff that I've tried to grab, like trying to get a copy of Wasteland for the 664 in a box, it's been extremely pricey. Some of this old stuff, it really does. It like any sort of fun you might get out of the impulse buying of it goes right away when it's like they want $54.99 for a floppy disk.
I remember. I still have Bard's Tale and a few of the other Electronic Arts games in the. I guess they called them like the album.
Sure.
They were like the flat box that opened up. Like an album, and. I thought, you know what? I don't know how many different games they released in that format. I think I have Pinball Construction Set, maybe a couple others like that. And I thought, God, I should collect all these. And I went on eBay, and the first one was like $60, and I went, well, that's over. It was like a hobby that ended 30 seconds after it started. Yep, that's over. and with the modern mentality of, well, if it's old, it must be, worth something, and anybody can sell on eBay. It's harder to find those things of, I'm sure people threw those away in the trash.
Sure.
I'm sure, you could have got them for a couple of bucks or something, but now,
Yeah.
Damn eBay. eBay is like the double-edged sword. It's like you can get, stuff, but I just paid $20 for these, stupid little rubber space guys that used to be in McDonald's Happy Meals. It's so ridiculous, And when I saw them, I was like, holy crap, I used to have these,
Well, you got to get them back again.
Right.
That's right, yeah.
That's why I bought it, And then my wife, I opened the box and she's like, what are those? I'm like, these were the guys in McDonald's Happy Meals, And she's like, well, I know that, but what are you going to do with it? I'm like, shit, I don't know. But look how cool they are. And she's like, yeah, but... So that part didn't... I haven't got to that part yet of what to do with them.
Yes, it's a good thing that you've already gone on dates with her and sort of wooed her over. It's good.
Right. And if it's like everything else, I'll either keep it forever or I'll sell it on eBay for half of what I paid, which is the worst. It's the worst business model, But so what? I guess we talked about Get Lamp. I mean, was there any? I assume you enjoyed it, and
yeah, I think Jason said once that he hopes that he eventually makes the worst text adventure documentary out there. Meaning that if somebody watched that and said, God, there was nothing about British IF, I think he would be the first person to. And he's just a dude. It's he's not HBO, so he's unable to. Like, I'm trying to think, if someone was going to go make a documentary about Level 9 and Magnetic Scrolls, I can't see any way to do it unless you're already in England. And some of them, people are going to drop out. Not everybody wants to be a part of a documentary.
Right.
So there's going to be a certain percentage you're never going to get to. But yeah, it was... I remember watching the hour-long cut he had of Get Lamp in PAX. It would have been about a year ago. And I just thought it was the greatest movie I'd ever seen. And he, at one point, has a part where he brings all of the Infocom developers in, like, to say something, like one right after another. And it's like an all-star lineup. It's like going through the 27 Yankees for Dorks. And I think, wow, this is just amazing. That piece of film, that stretch he had right there, just blew my mind. So, yeah.
Now the original Infocom games came with what have now I don't remember calling them this at the time, but they call them feelies now. Like,
oh yeah,
like a little thing, a little. Really, I always thought they were just like a reward for buying the game. It was kind of
right.
It was kind of slightly predated actual physical copy protection. We could talk about that in a minute, but so as kind of a throwback to that, Get Lamp comes with a numbered coin, and didn't people who participated in the movie or were interviewees, didn't you get like a lower numbered coin or something?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think I got number 21 or something.
Oh,
it's actually
wow.
out in the other room, and I don't have any sort of wireless system in place.
Let's just say it's 21.
I got
It's
number 21. And yeah, so
You know whoever has number 21, if it's not you, is going to contact me.
he's going to be fuming. He's going to be like, you're in my basement and inside my mind. Yeah, the coins were really great. Man, it just, we didn't buy too many Infocon games as a family growing up. I hate to say it. I mean, I've bought them over and over and over again every chance that I've had since then. But when we did get some, it seemed like such an event where you would go and get all this free stuff with it. It was great. Like, I remember, to immediately choose an example, which isn't a text game, there was Ultima 7, the Black Gate gives you the little moonstone, and it's just this little chunk of plastic. You know, it's dumb, but for some reason having that appeals to the same kind of people who play these games.
Yeah.
And having that glow in the dark stone for Wishbringer, this is awesome. And I don't know how many times that a gal would have been over and like, what's that glowing thing in the dark? Like, oh, nothing, honey. It's certainly not a feelie from a text adventure that is mysteriously and inexplicably in my room.
Well, and it seems like the feelies, like in the early Infocom days, had no added value to the game itself. I mean, it may have added to the whatever you want to say, like the enjoyment of the package or to the atmosphere or whatever, but you didn't need those things to play the game.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there's any I don't think there was one where they specifically made you look up a word in.
Yeah, because then it moved into that, and then eventually we got into like the code wheel things, which didn't have anything to do with the game at all. It was just
I think Infocom didn't engage in any of that. I think I want to say there was one. I haven't played them all, so for all I know, like Sea Stalker, that one for little children, all it is it wants you to read back the manual because it's trying to test your ability to read. But I think that they helped create atmosphere. But seeing how they've sold the games over and over again on just a CD,
right,
good.
Yeah.
So
with GitLamp, like I said, a lot of people have shown back up into people that, like myself, who said, I didn't know that people were still making these games. Whereas the people that were making it never went away. You know what I mean? It was just our perception of it. But and now they have like these contests and stuff, or I guess they've had them for a while. But so I participated. Just judging, just playing the games or whatever, and I was amazed at the I don't want to say the quality, but let's say some of them were great,
sure,
and some are terrible, but
there's a couple competitions which happen every year. There's the one in the fall, the interactive fiction competition, and there's one called the Spring Thing, which is actually coming up. I want to say that that on March 31st is the deadline to enter a game for that. I know Adam Thornton he's publicly said that the Stiffy McCain game that he's working on is going to be in that. The thing that impresses me about the fall interactive fiction competition is I get the sense that people, maybe they're spending a year working on these things, and they're able to, they're games which are maybe 2 hours long, but when you take a look at the ones that place in the top 10 or the top 15, the quality is pretty solid. And it's not someone spending their entire life making one either. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Now, and all these games, just like all the other ones are, they're made with free tools and they're also free to download and play. But I know Andrew Plotkin raised some money through Kickstarter, and he's actually trying to start a movement or whatever you want to call it, or start a way for people to sell text adventures through new platforms. I know he's targeting the iPhone, or iOS. But do you think there's ever going to be a market for selling text adventures?
I think in his case there will be, because there's the appeal of playing the new game from Andrew Plotkin. Mm-hmm. So if I thought text adventures on an iPhone were a little bit tough to play, but that completely went away the first time I saw one on an iPad.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think that in his case, I think he's going to do really well because he's going to make cool games that will have an extremely high level of quality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not sure if you're going to like them or not, he's got at least 4 or 5 really, really solid wares that you can go through and enjoy and get yourself psyched for the one that he's going to come out with next. That being said, I think it would be really tough for someone to start out cold using the tools that will eventually become available and try to sell their game on the iPhone. But you know what? There's a journalist, his name is Stuart Campbell, who's done a lot of work on what can happen if you sell your iPhone or iPad program for like 99 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem like that's a huge barrier. I think there's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to say they'll buy anything for 99 cents, but with all the gameplay you get for just not a lot of money, man, it does seem like that would be a pretty cool platform to go sell on. Like I don't think I would do it myself, only because it seems like we're a long ways off to using Hugo on the web or on an iPad device or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you've got an established brand as much as you can in the realm of text adventures, like put it this way: if the guys who make Zork came out with Zork 4 and they said it was going to be $5 on the iPad, I would probably get an iPad for it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and well, I saw that several years ago when Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails said that he was going to sell his music on his website only.
Sure.
And so the idea was that there would be no more record label. You go to 9inchnails.com and his new album is there, and you pay through PayPal, and then you get to download the album. And I thought that's great if you're 9 Inch Nails and people know 9inchnails.com. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you're joeblow.com, and how do you get that word out? But the that 90 cent or 99 cent price point you mentioned is interesting because there's been a couple of articles over the last week of people who have I know there's the girl, her vampire stories. I don't know if you've heard this news story. It's been I have not caught on, but essentially it's a story of a 26-year-old girl who is cranking out teen demographic vampire romance novels.
Sure.
But her business plan is she sells them only through or on the Kindle, so they're only sold electronically. And I think it said now officially she's a millionaire, and her books cost $2.99.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next point. This is the last podcast, and the next one will be I'm only doing vampire romance podcasts from now on. So I don't know who my next guest will be. Anybody? That girl. If I can get that girl on the show.
You get her to come on, and you get somebody who's just going to say blah, blah, over and over again, Rob. I think that, yes.
She's going to charge me a fortune, though. She's a millionaire. She won't deal with the likes of us. But, and then there was an article that I talked about a little bit on my blog this week that was linked to from Slashdot and Boing Boing and a couple other sites about how ebooks are gravitating towards that same price point, that 99 cent price point, which, initially I almost was kind of, and I said that I felt insulted a little bit, and
sure.
Because like Commodore, especially, I talk more about that than Invading Spaces, but Commodore, it wasn't 2 years worth of work, but it was 2 years for it to come together. As I wrote stuff and then, figured out how I was going to organize it and how I was going to do this and that, and Invading Spaces didn't take that long because it was more intentional, I guess is the right word. Like I just said, I'm going to write this, and then near the end of Invading Spaces, I went and rented a lakeside cabin for a couple of days, basically because growing up I loved the movie Funny Farm. I don't know if you ever saw it with Chevy Chase, and he's an author, and they go rent this farmhouse, and he goes and sits in the attic with his typewriter, and he's gonna bang away on his novel, but
I think the Shining had the same sort of premise.
yeah, exactly. So
I'm with you. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
So it was that kind of idea of like, well, I need to get this done, and especially, once you get girlfriends and wives and then kids, and it's hard to just go sit down and write for a few hours. So that was kind of like the end push. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is when I think about those books, I think about all the from the very beginning of a concept to getting the final thing published, and to think that that's only worth 99 cents to somebody, that's why I almost felt offended in a way. But
oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I guess the way to look at it is that it's not worth, like, no one is saying that your time or the guy who goes and puts out a text adventure on the iPad for 99 cents, like, no one is really saying that your time is worth 99 cents as much as it is people who are only barely in control of their own lives will click on buy because it's that small amount of money.
Right,
and you'll get that money regardless of whether or not they've actually spent any time thinking about it. So, yeah, I know totally what you mean. It's like I put most of my games out for free.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that my time is, I'm not saying that my time is valueless in making them or anything. But for me, it's like more about getting people to play them.
Right,
to experience them. And that is the one thing. And I'm not telling you to, but there's this whole thing with how prices got skewed low, which, like, I have a huge problem with on one hand, but everything I've read says that you do make an enormous amount of money at 99 cents. So while I think that there's something totally wrong with that, but I can't quite.
Right. Well, the point of the article, and this is where I kind of had my where I kind of came around, I guess, a little bit, was the point of the article was that in a traditional, and this has been true for music publishing for years, and I'm sure it has been for authors as well. I'm just don't know as much about that. But as far as the music industry goes, a really good record deal for a performer is to get 10 cents per song on each CD sold. So for every CD that sells in Walmart for $15 or $16, if it has 10 songs on it, the artist makes $1. So if you and I know that you don't get 100% of the money, like for something through iTunes, but let's say it's close enough just for conversation, But if you say, well, if you can make, you make 70 cents off of a 99-cent song that sold on iTunes versus making $1 off of a CD that sold in a brick and mortar store, it's just not that much. The artist isn't the person that's taking the cut. It's the whole middle process. It's the rent, whatever rent Walmart pays, and having those trucks ship things across the country, and all the money that goes into that. So, and for, if I were selling books for $1.99 and making the same amount of profit as I was for a print book, then I guess it's not that much. I don't know, it just kind of seems insulting that, you know what I mean? But it's the impression, but I don't know, I think that it may be the way we're going. And maybe, with these text adventures like on phones and stuff like that, maybe we could see a breakthrough at 99-cent prices or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. There is a program out there called Frotz, which will show up in the iStore. And I don't know if did you ever have a chance to download that? And
I use WinFrotz, but I haven't used Frotz on the iPhone.
Okay. Yeah, the Frotz comes with a few. It comes with a few games. Frotz used to let you access the interactive fiction database and pull out games in real time.
Oh, wow.
But then, which was awesome. And then somebody at Apple found out about it. Because people were having fun, they had to, they put an end to that quick. And now I want to say it came back at one point, but I can't remember. But regardless, it's used. Anybody who might be listening to this podcast and has an iPhone or an iPad can transfer files over to their device anyway.
Right.
But so for us, really, it's not a huge thing. But I thought the iPad seemed perfect for playing a text game. It seemed like you had plenty of room. You had enough buffer of what happened where you could you didn't have to keep everything in your own memory. You did have stuff to refer to. And one thing that I'll just throw this out here. I would guess that if that does take off, you'll see people write less and less for their games in terms of like the sentences will be shorter and more compact if they're thinking about going on these devices.
To fit the format? I mean, the physical format of the devices, you think?
Yeah, I would think so, because if I knew in advance that I was going to make something that was going to show up on an iPad, in like at the beginning of Fallacy at Dawn, there's something like, I don't know, like 50 paragraphs or something stupid like that. Well, if I was going to write something for a smaller device, I think I might edit myself well beyond what I was currently editing myself back then for.
Right.
That might have an interesting shift.
So I guess that's kind of a good segue into what do you think the future of text adventures and interactive fiction holds?
I think that you'll see the games. I think it'll be very easy for the games to bend over backwards to help players who have never played text adventures get going with them. Aaron Reed posted something to his Facebook page the other day where he's working on Inform 7 extension, and he typed "Get Ye Flask," which is if you've ever saw there's a website called Homestar Runner where they do this very funny bit. Okay, yeah. And so his extension understands the word "ye," understands that it's not important, and actually gives you the flask. So I think stuff like that, where we'll see more things that respond to who am I, where am I, direct questions to the parser, because if that's just dropping something in, I think it's going to be very easy for people to put in.
Yeah.
I wonder about whether or not people will use graphics. There is a project, I think it's called Glimmer for Inform, which is being worked on to help graphics come into play. I haven't used it myself. I just can't say from my experience, it doubles the amount of time you're going to take putting your game together. If you're going to have a graphic for every scene, you're going to have an actor for every character. But I don't know. In my opinion, I think that kind of makes them approachable to some people who might get turned off initially just by this big block of text. But I you know what? I kind of think that they're just going to continue how they are now. I think we're going to see, much like jazz, you're going to have a bunch of hardcore enthusiasts who remember the good old days. And at the same time, it's not going to surprise me at all if interest in it sort of dies off, like interest in the old Model T sort of dried up. Like you had people who were kids when the Model T came out. When they got older, from what I understand, they would go buy Model Ts. But then when their kids grew up, they had no attachment to it whatsoever.
Right.
And I think that the games industry will do a good job of keeping arcade games around. So even though the games themselves will probably live on, I do, boy, it's really tough to think that 100 years from now people will still be playing the same text adventures they're playing now. I would be surprised if that's the case.
I know that when I first started looking at putting together a text adventure, one of the reasons I chose Inform as a programming language was because that it was so easy to port or to play online on the web, and I think that's something that they have to move to browser based, just to make games less platform dependent, I guess.
You're absolutely right. That's an excellent point. Being able just to give somebody a URL, something they can click on and start playing a game is so awesome. And there's nothing I'm working on which currently does that. So it's pretty awesome for everybody else. But that's when we were talking about what language to use.
Right.
That's why I was like, even though I've probably written more lines of Hugo than anybody else in the world, I could not say, go make it in Hugo, because hopefully one day we can run Hugo programs over the internet, but being able to do that in Inform, that's a great point. And I think that will help keep the genre alive far beyond what it might normally survive to. Just the fact that it's going to be among the easiest games to play going forward. Yeah, that is a great point. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
I'm trying to think what else we've got about text adventures. You want to plug your game? Tell me about your game.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
All right. The name of the game is Crypto Zookeeper, and it's a graphical text game. And the idea of the game is that you're going to be going around trying to find DNA samples of regular animals. And when you get those, you would combine them in order to form animals that you might know of in cryptozoology. So let's say you find a gorilla and a bear, and you take a sample of them, combine them together. The game will then produce Bigfoot, and it'll give you a picture of Bigfoot, which is actually me in a Bigfoot costume. And let's say you get a human DNA and a monkey DNA. Well, there's a cryptid called the Human Z, which is supposed to. Now, none of this is science. I should say none of this stuff actually exists, but there's some crazy yokel in some town thought he saw something that he described as a Human Z. The game will let you make one of those, and then you use the cryptids that you create in order to level them up, and so it's got an RPG element like that in order to defeat the protagonist's enemies. It's something that I've been working on a while, and then while all this is going on, hopefully that people will find it funny, and that the writing will make them laugh.
And so, how many cryptids are in this game?
There's a that's a great question. I know the combination of how many regular animals and cryptids. Okay. There's over 200 creatures in the game. Some of them you fight, like you go and create Bigfoot, and then you put him in the ring, and he fights a sheep. So that the sheep is one of the 200.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's over 200 animals there, and what I've really tried to do is for each regular animal, like a fish or a sheep or a dog, if I don't have access to that animal, I've tried to leverage Creative Commons licensed work for pictures like that. But for any of the cryptids, I've tried to do the best I can to recreate them in real life in some form. And if that means taking a couple pictures that I shot and then going into Photoshop and combining them, then that's okay.
So yeah, that would definitely, I could see, add to your development time.
Yeah,
and having to have pictures of all those things.
It's sucked in some respects because the fur-bearing trout is one of the most famous things of cryptozoology. I got to make a fur-bearing trout, so I've got to go get a fish at one point, and I've got to shave my cats to get enough fur to put on the fish. And I've got to find some sort of spray glue in order to keep the fur there. The problem is though that my girlfriend doesn't like the cats with all the fur on them, so she is cutting them at a far greater rate than I can get my act together for the fish, because I don't want to keep a whole fish in my house. Because it's kind of creepy. So it has introduced a few fun things, but it's fine. All artists suffer for their work. It's totally okay.
Sounds much more detailed than my game that I'm wrapping up, which
I like the idea of Hangar 22 a lot. I think that's great.
When you get the air knocked out of your sails, so I came up with this idea that you're basically, it's like I tried to. The beginning of the game, it tells you the goal is one thing, and then halfway through the game, you find out the goal is something else. Sure. Basically the game starts and you're unemployed and you're starving, and so the whole goal is to get food. And during this process, you find out about a job at Hangar 22, which is like Hangar 18,
sure.
And so anyway, then eventually you get a job at Hangar 22, and so then the second half of the game takes place there. And when I say half of a game, I think you could probably play through this thing in, half an hour or something like that. It's not a huge scope,
Yep.
a huge world or anything like that. But then when I was reading the reviews of the interactive fiction competition this last fall, and there were a lot of reviews of games. First of all, there were a couple of awful games that really just took place in your house.
Sure.
And in the games, all you did was you wandered around the house and get stuff, And so then I'm like, God, this is exactly like my game, So that must be like the first thing I think people program.
Yeah.
And so then when I read reviews, people are like, oh, God, it's another one of these where you're in your house. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, this is exactly my game. So I tried to, there's definitely some little twists and the game itself. I think when people play it, the entertainment won't necessarily come from the difficult. And there are 2 or 3 puzzles. Things that you'll actually have to sit down and figure out, Yeah. But more than that, I think just from the writing, like the jokes and the humor and stuff like that, I think that's where more people will be entertained than I don't think anybody's going to walk away from Hangar 22 and be talking about the great puzzle where you had to free the alien from the cage using, well, I don't want to give things away, but you know what I mean, like boy, that was I can't believe he came up with that idea for a talking GPS in El Camino, there's no really revolutionary. The GPS, by the way, is one that you found that someone else has discarded, and the reason they discarded it is because it was a promo GPS that was given away with Sir Mix-a-Lot album. So the GPS only talks to you in Sir Mix-a-Lot's voice. So, every time you want to go somewhere, it says, buttermilk biscuits, and then or it just throws out random Sir Mix-a-Lot. So if you're not a Sir Mix-a-Lot fan, I don't think you'll think it's funny. But
that could take off. Adam Cadre created something called Chocolate Chex, that cereal, in narcolepsy. A few years later, they came out with Chocolate Chex. So
see,
I don't know what Sir Mix-a-Lot's schedule looks like these days. If he's out touring Boise or something, but you never know, man.
Well, right when I was working on this, right when I first had the idea and I was working on it, it was probably a month later I heard they released the Star Wars voices for the GPS. There's a Darth Vader and a Yoda, so the technology's there. We just need Sir Mix-a-Lot on board, But yeah, so every time you try to drive somewhere, it's baby got back, and then you zoom off, So there's just lots of goofy little things like that. So I think people will enjoy the writing and the humor more so than the technical aspects. There's no, I'm not pushing Inform to its boundaries. Let's just say that. It's getting through things,
Right. But that's the one really magical thing about text games is that I think the writing in most commercial games are pretty bad, and I think the process of how they come up with the writing and what people say in games, you've got, maybe someone had a great piece of dialogue, but after 15 people looked at it and had to give their 2 cents, it turned out to be pretty bland and it turned out to suck. You don't really have to go through that in text games. You get more of an opportunity to hang out with either the narrator or a lot of games are written, even if they're in the second person, still sort of stylized by the protagonist.
Sure.
And I think that's great. That's one of the things I really like about them a lot.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be something really cool about your game as well. It's going to be hanging out with Flack as he tells you a story. I think that's awesome.
There's a few times where I've seen a lot of other people do this, where they kind of break that third wall, Yeah. So there's one point where you're searching through a closet of clothes. You're looking for a particular piece of clothing, and one of the things in there is a butcher's apron that's covered in blood. So you can take it, and then when you try to put it on, I just wrote a thing and said, this is an apron covered in someone else's blood. Like, why would you want to put this on? Like, right. That doesn't even make sense, And it's kind of like a whole thing of berating him, like, you might want to stop playing now and just, recheck your priorities, because that's just weird, dude. So I said, there's a lot of little things like that, and it is, like I said, it goes back to that. I remember reading a thing about, I think it was Grand Theft Auto 4.
Okay.
That cost, that I don't remember how many people worked on it, but it said it had an overall budget of $100 million, and it was the most expensive game. And I thought, for one of the people, and I'm sure there were thousands of people that worked on it, to just come up with a funny joke and throw it in, that's never, there's going to be so many layers of bureaucracy, and there's so much money invested and writing on those things to succeed, that they can't just get away with some of the things that you can get away with a free text adventure.
Totally. Yeah.
There's less writing on it, I guess, but I think it makes it better.
It is the thing I like about him. Probably the most. Yeah.
So, well, I think we've covered it. I think we got everything about text adventures. I'm looking forward to playing yours.
Likewise. I'm not sure. I think, are you thinking about putting Hangar 22 out just like as a free game? Are you thinking about maybe throwing it into a competition? Or, I'm not even sure if, like, us talking about it, like, I hope that we didn't just ruin your ability to put it in the fall comp.
No.
Okay.
I think, for me, it was kind of just something I wanted to do to write one, but it's a slightly more advanced than a Hello World effort, but that's really,
Sure.
what I was thinking of is like, after doing this, I kind of, I realized how to program the objects, how to move things around or whatever, and so I think if I were doing something for one of the competitions, I don't know that I would do a more serious tone necessarily, but it seems a little lighthearted to, not lighthearted, but silly. You know what I mean? To be a serious thing. But, after playing some of the entries in these other competitions, I think that there is a spot for somebody that's a good writer that could put together the code and stuff, but you got to be able to do both parts. I think is important. It's a special. I don't know what you want to say, but
I've heard it described as like you need both halves of your brain working together.
Yeah.
That going.
Because
I know nothing about the brain, so I don't even know. Like if you ask me how the brain is divided up.
You have to be able. Well, it's like whenever you're writing a book, they say you shouldn't edit when you're writing because it uses each half, at the same time. So you should, spend an hour writing and then later go back and edit. But when you're switching back and forth, I guess it's harder to do, But yeah, it's definitely a hobby that involves, that there's a deep technical aspect of the programming where, you have to be able to maybe not anticipate every single thing the player can do, but if you leave obvious things out, then it makes it obvious. You know what I mean?
I put a bag of blood in Necrotic Drift at the very end, and there's a vampire in the game, and the vampire reacted as bored as an ox on a hill when shown the bag of blood.
Right.
And I'm like, I didn't know about that till the game came out. I was like, probably should have done something with that. That would have been nice. It's only the one thing in life it craves more than anything else. Why would it react? So,
but all right. Well, I guess we'll wrap this up. Yeah. Thanks for doing this. I've had a lot of requests to get somebody else involved in the podcast. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
This is a tremendous amount of fun. If you need me for pickups or anything, actually, I don't even know what that means. But, if you need me to say anything over again.
I don't know. It sounds like a farmer's daughter joke.
Right on.
But, awesome. All right. Well, I don't know. Let me look at our recording here.
Okay.
All right. We're just over the 2-hour mark, so this should be the most epic podcast ever. Like my hard drive is like actually physically getting bigger. It's bloating up. So. And that's pretty much how the recording ended. So a little bit of a abrupt ending of the interview with Robb Sherwin. But I have to say thank you to Robb Sherwin for taking the time to sit and yak about text adventures. I know this podcast is probably, I want to say it's almost twice as long as my longest podcast. So I know it's pretty lengthy and bloated, but I appreciate for those of you that stayed all the way to the end. I appreciate it. A few links I should throw out. Robb Sherwin runs 2 websites. The first one is Caltrops, CALTROPS.com. So if you want to go get news about gaming and go to the forums and be abused, then that's the place to do that. Robb's personal site is joltcountry.com. That's where his blog is, so you can check those 2 sites out. Also on the posting about the podcast, I'll add the links for where you can download Crypto Zookeeper. It's a free download. You can also buy Crypto Zookeeper for, I believe it's $15 from Robb's site. I'll add a link to that. If you purchase it, you actually get 2 discs in a DVD hard case. The first disc contains the game, and I believe you get the source code, and the second disc is the soundtrack to music. There's all kinds of stuff. So if you're a fan of text adventures and want to support text adventures, the interactive fiction, then that's a great way to do that. I'll also add a link to Inform and all the languages that are used for writing text adventures. Those are all free, so you can download those and maybe write your own adventures. So with that, I'm going to wrap up 115. Don't know why I'll wrap it up. 2 hours, I might just talk for 3. I might just keep it going. But anyway, I've got 116 is going to be all about Mr. Moonpie. For those of you that know who Mr. Moonpie is, that'll be a little special treat for all the old schoolers. If you don't know who Mr. Moonpie is, then you'll definitely want to check out episode 116. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for tuning in. And I will see you all soon.